California sun beat down, turning the asphalt parking lot into a shimmering mirage. Inside the cavernous sound stage, however, the air conditioning hummed a constant low drone. Elvis Presley, dressed in a surprisingly normal crumpled t-shirt and jeans, leaned against a prop palm tree, trying to look casual. He was supposed to be learning lines, but his mind kept wandering. Another day, another movie. It wasn't that he didn't like making movies, he did, sort of. Cameras, the lights, the familiar faces of the crew. It was all part of his world now. Sometimes, especially during long stretches between scenes, a dull ache of restlessness settled in his chest. He missed the raw energy of a live show, the direct connection with a crowd. On a movie set, he was a star, yes, but often a lonely one. Separated by layers of fame and a strict schedule. He watched the crew. The gaffers, the grips, the lighting guys, they were always moving, always doing something with their hands. During breaks, they'd often gather, chattering like a flock of sparrows. Today, a few of them were tossing a beat-up leather football around outside the soundstage doors, their laughter drifting in. One particularly strong throw went wide, bouncing off a stage light and landing near Elvis. "Oops, sorry, Mr. Presley," yelled a young grip, jogging over. He had a smudge of grease on his cheek and a wide, friendly grin. Elvis picked up the ball. It felt good in his hands, familiar from his childhood days in Tupelo. "No problem, son." He tossed it back with a casual flick of his wrist. The grip caught it, surprise flickering across his face at the unexpected speed and accuracy. "Nice arm, Mr. Presley," he called out, impressed Elvis. Just smiled. But as he watched them resume their game, an idea small at first began to bubble. An idea that felt like fresh air, like freedom. A way to bridge the gap. Later that afternoon, during a break for lunch, the crew gathered in the commissary, a plain room with long tables and linoleum floors. The air was thick with the smell of lukewarm coffee and questionable hamburgers. Elvis usually ate in his trailer, but today he felt a pull to be among them. He grabbed a tray and sat down at an empty corner table, drawing curious glances. "Hey everybody," he called out, his voice cutting through the chatter used to projecting to thousands. The room quieted instantly, every head turned towards him. Some looked confused, others wary. How y'all doing?" he added, feeling a little self-conscious under the sudden spotlight. "Listen, I was thinking." He paused, searching for the right words. "We spend a lot of time out here making these pictures, and it's good work, you know, but sometimes it feels a little all work and no play." A few mumbled agreements. A prop master chuckled. "So I was thinking we ought to do something fun," Elvis continued, his eyes scanning the faces, looking for a spark of interest. "Something to kind of blow off steam, get to know each other outside of all this." He held up his hands, gesturing to the set around them. "And I got an idea. How about a touch football league?" Silence. A fork clattered onto a plate. Then a low murmur started, growing into a buzz. "A what, Mr. Presley?" asked a boom operator, scratching his head. "A touch football league." Elvis repeated, his enthusiasm growing now that the words were out. "Cast versus crew or mixed teams. We could play after shooting or on weekends just for fun. You know, no tackle, just touch. We could even get little jerseys or something." A thin, wiry gaffer named Joe, who usually looked perpetually grumpy, scoffed loudly from across the room. "Football, we work 14-hour days, Mr. Presley. We don't need to be running around on a field afterwards, getting ourselves hurt." A few others nodded in agreement with Joe. "Oh, Mr. Presley, that sounds wonderful." It was Linda, a young extra who spent most of her time trying to avoid being noticed, though her wide, hopeful eyes always gave her away. She was new to Hollywood, and it showed in her innocent excitement. "I used to play a little in high school, just for fun, of course." Elvis beamed at her. "See, Linda gets it. It's all about fun and building up a little team spirit. What do you say?" Who's in? More murmurs. Some whispered, "Is he serious?" Others just stared. Getting hurt was a real concern. A sprained ankle meant no work, no pay. And then there was the idea of Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, out on a dusty field running around like anyone else. It seemed impossible. But Elvis was relentless. "Come on now, we got enough folks here for a few teams. Think about it. A little friendly competition, some exercise, a chance to show off your moves, and it'll be a way for us all to get to know each other better beyond the cameras and the lights." He stood up, radiating his usual charm. "I'll even put up a sign-up sheet tomorrow morning, first game, next weekend. What do you say?" He looked directly at Joe, who still had his arms crossed and a skeptical frown etched on his face. Joe just grunted, but Elvis saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Curiosity, perhaps, or maybe just resignation. As Elvis left the commissary, the buzz intensified. Some people were laughing, others still shaking their heads in disbelief, but a few, like Linda, had a spark in their eyes. An idea unexpected and a little wild had been planted. And in Hollywood, where everything was about illusion, Elvis had just proposed something wonderfully, refreshingly real. The sign-up sheet, he knew, would be the true test. The next morning, a crisp white sheet of paper taped to the call sheet board announced the birth of the movie Magic Gridiron League. Then, a couple of younger grips. Emboldened by her courage, a makeup artist signed up, then a gate twist. Even a couple of the smaller part actors, eager for any excuse to spend more time around Elvis, added their names. Elvis watched from a distance, a small smile playing on his lips. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He knew some people thought it was a crazy idea, a waste of time. But he also saw the genuine excitement in some faces, the way people nudged each other, whispering possibilities. He waited until after lunch to make his formal announcement. He gathered everyone he could near the soundstage entrance. "All right, everybody, thanks to all you brave souls who signed up. We've got enough for 4 teams. Looking good." A smattering of applause and nervous laughter. Joe, the gaffer, stood near the back, arms still crossed, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Now, a few ground rules," Elvis continued, holding up a hand. "This is about fun. So rule number 1, safety first. This is touch football. 2-hand touch, light contact only, no pushing, no roughhousing. Anyone tries to tackle, they're out for the game, got it? A chorus of, 'Got it, Mr. Presley.' And, yes, Elvis." Rule number 2. Sportsmanship. We're all one big family. Here making a picture together, so no trash talking. No arguing over cocking. We'll have reffing, troubly. Or maybe we can rotate. But my word is final on the field. Agree. Rule number 3. Fun. If you ain't having fun, you ain't doing it right. That's the whole point of this. No pressure, no worries. Just getting out there and letting loose. Now for the tricky part, team selection. All right, so how do we split them up? I was thinking, to make it fair, we do a draft. I'll pick one captain and that captain picks another, and so on. We'll draw names out of a hat for who gets picked first. Murmurs of agreement. This felt democratic, less like the boss dictated. And finally Elvis said, "Where are we going to play?" "There's a big, open, grassy area behind the studio lot, kind of overgrown, but we can clear it up. It ain't pretty, but it's flat enough. We'll aim for our first practice this Saturday morning, and then the first game next Saturday. How's that sound?" "Saturday morning I usually sleep in," grumbled the camera assistant. "Yeah, but you'll feel better after a little running around," Elvis shot back with a wink. "Clear the cobwebs out." As people started to disperse, Elvis approached Joe. "Hey, Joe, you signed up yet?" Joe startled slightly, clearly not expecting to be addressed directly. "No, Mr. Presley, I told you, I ain't got time for games." "Oh, come on, Joe, just for a little bit. We need some folks with some muscle out there, and I hear you used to play a little in high school back in Ohio." Joe's eyes narrowed. "Who told you that? Word gets around," Elvis said, shrugging with a smile. Listen, Joe, this ain't about being a star. This is about everybody getting together, blowing off steam. It'd mean a lot if you joined. We need steady hands. Joe looked away, then back at Elvis, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He still looked skeptical, but Elvis knew he'd planted a seed. Later, as the team rosters were being finalized, Linda approached Elvis, wringing her hands nervously. "Mr. Presley, I'm so excited about this, but, well, I'm not very good. I mean, I try, but I'm pretty clumsy. I don't want to let my team down on her shoulder." Linda's face brightened. "Yes, Mr. Presley, thank you." Elvis smiled. "Now go on and get ready. I'm putting you on the Blue Swedes team. We're going to have some fun." He looked over at the completed sign-up sheet. Joe's name was at the very bottom, scrawled in a hurried hand. Next to it, he'd written "Gaffer's Grip" as his preferred position. Clearly a joke. Elvis chuckled. It seemed the old gaffer had finally given in. The movie Magic Gridiron League was officially on Saturday morning arrived. Bright and surprisingly cool. The makeshift football field behind the studio lot was, as Elvis had described, overgrown but flat enough. A few grips had come in early to mark out rudimentary boundaries with spare rope and spray paint. The grass was a little high, and a discarded tire lay half buried near what would be the end zone. But it was a field, and it was ready. About 30 people showed up, a mix of actors and crew members, some looking excited, others clearly nursing hangovers or initial regrets. Elvis arrived, dressed in track pants and a simple t-shirt, looking less like a movie star and more like a high school coach. He carried a slightly deflated football under his arm. "All right, folks, welcome to the inaugural practice of the movie Magic Gridiron League," he boomed, his voice echoing a little in the open air. "Okay, so we've got 4 teams. I'll read off the rosters, and then we'll do some warm-ups." Elvis read the names, dividing them into the Blue Swedes, Heartbreakers, Jailhouse Rockers, and Hound Dogs. Linda was indeed on the Blue Swedes. Joe was on the Jailhouse Rockers. Warm-ups were a comical affair. Some people stretched enthusiastically, others awkwardly mimicked, clearly out of their element. Elvis led them through some jumping jacks and light jogging, trying to keep it fun and loose. "All right, let's just do some basic passing and catching drills," Elvis instructed. "Don't worry about being perfect, just get a feel for the ball." Linda, true to her word, was a bit clumsy. She fumbled easy catches and her throws wobbled off course, but she kept trying, a determined frown on her face. Her teammates, a quiet set designer and a boisterous lighting tech, offered gentle encouragement. "You'll get it, Linda. Keep your eye on the ball." Joe, meanwhile, surprised everyone. He wasn't fast, and he definitely wasn't agile. But when he caught a ball, his hands were like bises. His throws, though not graceful, were surprisingly accurate and strong. He rarely smiled, but there was a focused intensity in his eyes that hadn't been there on set. He kept mostly to himself, but when one of his younger teammates missed a pass, he'd grumble, "Keep your eye on it, kid. Don't look away." Not exactly warm, but it was advice, and it was effective. After about an hour of drills, Elvis decided it was time for a quick scrimmage. Blue Swedes versus Jailhouse Rockers. 2 halves, 10 minutes each. Just get a feel for the flow of the game. Remember, 2 hand touch, no tackle. The whistle blew. The first play was a disaster. A receiver ran the wrong way. The quarterback fumbled the snap, and the ball ended up rolling harmlessly out of bounds. Laughter erupted from both sides, but slowly things started to click. There were moments of genuine athleticism. A swift camera operator dodging a tag, a boom mic operator making a surprising interception. And then there were moments of pure comedy, a wardrobe assistant tripping over her own feet, an actor dramatically diving for a ball and missing it by a mile. Linda was playing defense. Her team was trying to get a touch on the opposing quarterback. The quarterback scrambled, and Linda, seeing her chance, lunged forward. She missed the touch, but her flailing arm accidentally swatted the ball loose. A quick-thinking teammate scooped it up. "Fumble, our ball," yelled a blue suede. Linda looked mortified. "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize, Linda." Elvis called out from the sidelines where he was loosely officiating. "That's a good play. Keep at it." Joe, playing on the opposing team, watched the play unfold. He saw Linda's awkwardness, but also her persistence. He even grunted a little approvingly, though no one else noticed. Towards the end of the scrimmage, Elvis himself was on the field playing quarterback for the Blue Suits. He moved with a surprising grace, his long strides covering ground quickly. He threw a perfect spiral to a receiver running down the sideline, showing off the arm he'd always had. He was clearly enjoying himself, his famous smile wider and more genuine than it often was for the cameras. The game ended with no clear winner, but a lot of huffing, puffing, and high fives. Everyone was sweaty, a little dirty, but their faces were flushed with a mix of exertion and genuine happiness. The lines between star and crew blurred on that dusty field. As they walked off, Linda, still a bit breathless, approached Elvis. "Mr. Presley, that was harder than I thought, but it was fun." "That's the spirit, Linda," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "You did great. You got that ball loose, remember?" Joe walked past them, giving a curt nod to Elvis. "Still think it's a lot of work for a Saturday," he grumbled, but Elvis caught the slight upward turn at the corner of his mouth. The first scrimmage wasn't a masterpiece of football, but it was a masterpiece of connection. The laughter, the shared effort, the minor triumphs and humorous failures. They were all building something more than just a league. They were building a community. And for Elvis, that was worth more than any box office success. The movie Magic Gridiron League quickly became more than just a weekend activity. It bled into the weekdays. Lunch breaks in the commissary, once quiet affairs filled with the clatter of cutlery and the drone of small talk, now buzzed with animated discussions. "Did you see that pass Elvis threw? Joe almost got that interception. His hands are like glue. Linda's getting so much better. She almost caught that one today." The conversations weren't just about the games anymore. People who barely spoke to each other. On set, a grizzled electrician and a bubbly costume designer. A serious actor and a quiet sound engineer now found common ground. They talked about strategy, joked about their teammates' mishaps, and encouraged each other. The hierarchies that usually defined Hollywood sets seemed to dissolve when talk turned to football. Elvis noticed the change most keenly. Before, his interactions with the crew were mostly professional, polite but distant. Now groups would slap him on the back, offering unsolicited advice on his passing game. Mughal artists would tease him about a dropped ball. He was still Mr. Presley, of course, but there was a new, comfortable familiarity. He was part of their team, not just their boss. Linda, in particular, was blossoming. After a few more practices, her initial clumsiness was slowly giving way to a nascent grace. She wasn't the fastest or the most athletic, but she was dedicated. She'd show up early, practice catching with anyone willing, and listen intently to every piece of advice. One afternoon, during a break in filming, Elvis was tossing a ball with a couple of the younger crew members. Linda walked by on her way to grab a coffee. "Hey, Linda, come on over," Elvis called out, then smiled shyly and joined them. Elvis started with gentle, close-range throws, gradually increasing the distance and speed. Linda still bobbled a few, but she caught more than she missed. Then Elvis threw a slightly higher pass, one that required her to jump. She instinctively leaped, stretching her arms, and the ball slapped into her hands. She held onto it, eyes wide with surprise. "Look at that, Linda," Elvis cheered. "You got it. You went for it." A small cheer went up from the other crew members who had stopped to watch. Linda beamed a genuine, uninhibited smile that made her look 10 years younger. "I did. I actually did it." Meanwhile, Joe the gaffer was still a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He'd initially joined the league out of what seemed like reluctant obligation, but now he was fully invested. He'd draw up plays on scraps of paper during breaks, sketching diagrams with surprising detail. He'd quietly offer tips to his teammates, often sounding gruff, but clearly caring about their performance. During one game, his team, the Jailhouse Rockers, was struggling. Their quarterback was flustered, throwing quakes. Joe, playing defense, noticed a pattern in the opposing team's offense. He pulled his quarterback aside. "Listen," he muttered. "They're always running a slant on the second down. You gotta look for it. Throw a quick out or a dump pass to me. I'll be open. No one thinks a gaffer can catch." Quarterback, a young actor named Mike, looked skeptical, but nodded. On the very next play, Joe's prediction came true. The slant was open, but Mike remembered Joe's words. He threw a quick short pass to Joe, who surprisingly was indeed wide open. Joe caught it and rumbled forward for a solid gain. Startling everyone, most of all himself, the sideline erupted. "Goal, Joe, goal!" Joe, looking embarrassed by the attention, simply tossed the ball back to the referee without a word. But a faint flush crept up his neck, and Elvis, watching from the opposing sideline, grinned. Joe was in, deeply in. Even minor on-field disagreements, which were bound to happen in any competitive sport, were handled with surprising ease. Contested touch, a debated boundary line. Instead of escalating into some would usually say, "Ah, it's just for fun. Let's replay it." Or Elvis, as the occasional ref would step in with a calming, "All right, let's keep it friendly, folks." The fun first rule wasn't just a rule. It was the league's guiding principle. As the weeks went by, the movie Magic Gridiron League transformed the atmosphere on set. The usual divisions between talent and crew, between departments, between the new and the experienced, began to blur. They were all players, all teammates, all part of something bigger than just a movie. They were a community bound by shared sweat, laughter, and the simple joy of a game. And Elvis, watching it all unfold, felt a warmth spreading through him that was far more satisfying than any applause. The league had hit its stride, but like any good story, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Mid-season brought its own challenges. Scheduling became trickier as the movie's production picked up pace. Some players nursed minor aches and pains, a pulled hamstring here, a bruised knee there. Reminders that they weren't all 20-year-old athletes. And the relentless California sun started to take its toll, making afternoon games more grueling. The Heartbreakers team in particular was feeling the slump. They'd started strong, but a few tough losses had deflated their spirits. Their star wide receiver, a usually jovial makeup artist named Brenda, was visibly frustrated after dropping a few easy passes. Their quarterback, a nervous prop assistant, was losing confidence. Elvis, who was playing for the Hound Dogs team, noticed the Heartbreakers' flagging morale. He saw Brenda's slumped shoulders the way the prop assistant kept looking at his feet. This wasn't about winning, he reminded himself. It was about fun, about building each other up. "Hey, Brenda," Elvis called out during a water break. "Rough game, huh? We just can't get anything to click, Elvis. It's like we've forgotten how to play. Maybe we're just not good enough." "Nonsense," Elvis scoffed. "You're all good players sometimes, you just hit a wall. Happens to everyone, even me," he winked. "You just gotta remember what you're playing for, not the score, not the win, but for each other." He thought for a moment. "Tell you what, my treat, how about all the Heartbreakers come over to my place for dinner tonight? No football talk, just good food and good company. What do you say?" Brenda's eyes widened. "To your place really, Elvis?" "Course. My cook makes a mean fried chicken. It'll be a change of pace. Get your minds off the losses." That evening, the Heartbreakers, still a bit starstruck, gathered at Elvis's rented house. There was no talk of football, no post-game analysis, just laughter, good food, and Elvis playing guitar, singing old blues tune. By the end of the night, the tension had visibly drained from their shoulders. They left feeling refreshed, renewed, and with a stronger bond than any practice could have forged. Meanwhile, Linda was having her own moment of self-doubt. During one practice, she made a particularly embarrassing play. tripping over her own feet while trying to catch a short pass. She felt her face flush with embarrassed. "Oh, I'm just hopeless," she muttered, hanging her head. "I'm never going to be good at this." Her teammates, the quiet set designer, who usually kept to himself, walked over. "Hey, Linda, don't say that." He picked up the ball from the bushes. "You're not hopeless. You show up every time. You try harder than anyone I know. That's what matters. You're improving every week. Remember that jump catch last week? That was amazing." "Yeah, it was. You keep that up. We're a team. We mess up together. We get better together." He tossed her the ball. "Now let's try that again." Joe, meanwhile, was surprising everyone with his growing dedication. He'd started coming in early to help clear the field, pulling up weeds and moving stray rocks. He wasn't just playing, he was invested. During a particularly close game against Elvis's Hound Dogs, the score was tied in the final minute. Joe's jailhouse rockers had the ball. "All right, listen up," Joe barked, his voice surprisingly loud and authoritative. "Mike, you run a curl. Don't look at me. Look for the opening. If it's not there, dump it to the short side. I'll block." Mike, the young actor quarterback, nodded, wide-eyed. Joe, the gruff gaffer, was suddenly a field general. The play unfolded. Mike executed the curl, but the defense was tight. Just as he was about to be touched, he saw Joe, who had indeed blocked his man. Now, slipping into the flat, Mike threw a quick pass. Joe caught it, braced for impact, and rumbled forward, gaining just enough yards for a first down as the whistle blew, ending the game in a tie. It wasn't a win, but it felt like one. The jailhouse rockers cheered, slapping Joe on the back. Joe, for once, didn't grumble. He simply nodded, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. The mid-season slump, far from breaking the league, had strengthened it. The dinner at Elvis's, Linda's moment of doubt, overcome by a quiet teammate's encouragement, Joe's unexpected leadership. These moments proved that the league was more than just a series of games. It was about supporting each other, about finding strength in shared struggle, and about building bonds that went far beyond the movie set. The field, once just a patch of overgrown grass, had become a crucible of friendship. As the movie Magic Gridiron League entered its final stretch of regular season games, two teams began to pull ahead, establishing themselves as friendly, yet fierce rivalry. Elvis's own Hound Dogs and Joe's Soprockers. It started subtly. A little extra chatter before games, a few more spirited high fives after a good play. But soon it became clear that when these two teams met, the energy on the field notched up significantly. The scores were always close, the games always came down to the wire, and the tension, while friendly, was palpable. During one particularly memorable matchup, the Hound Dogs were driving late in the game, needing a touchdown to win. Elvis, playing quarterback, faked a handoff and rolled out to his right, looking for an open receiver. He saw a gap and started to run, his long legs eating up the yardage. Just as he crossed the 5-yard line, Joe, playing defensive line, lunged. His hand smacked Elvis's hip. "Touch!" Joe yelled, grinning. It was the first time Elvis had seen Joe truly grin on the field, a wide, challenging smile that transformed his usually stern face. Elvis stopped, hands on his knees, breathing hard. "You got me, Joe." "Good play." He laughed, genuinely impressed. The gap between the two teams grew. "Watch out for Joe's secret weapon," the Hound Dogs would tease. "He's got those gaffer's hands." And the jailhouse rockers would retort, "Elvis might be the king, but he can't outrun gravity." During one crucial play, Linda, playing for the Hound Dogs, teams had been occasionally reshuffled for balance, was assigned to cover a much taller actor. The ball was thrown her way too high for her to catch. Determined Linda leaped, flailing her arms, and somehow incredibly managed to deflect the ball just enough for it to fall incomplete. She landed with a thump covered in grass stains, but her face was alight with triumph. "Did you see that?" yelled one of her teammates. "Linda's got a vertical." Linda blushed. But a surge of confidence ran through her. She was a valuable player, making a difference. The rivalry between the Hound Dogs and the Jailhouse Rockers brought out the best in both teams. Elvis, while always competitive, found himself marveling at Joe's strategic mind. Joe might not have the flashiest moves, but he consistently put his players in the right positions, calling out defensive schemes that were surprisingly effective. And Joe, for his part, was clearly impressed by Elvis's natural athleticism and his ability to inspire his teammates even when they were down. Word of the league had started to spread beyond the immediate set. Other cast and crew members from different movies shooting on the studio lot would occasionally wander over during their breaks, curious to see the king himself playing football. Few studio executives even showed up one Saturday, ostensibly to check on production morale, but clearly enjoying the spectacle of Elvis running plays and laughing with his crew. Elvis didn't mind the spectators. In fact, he found himself enjoying the simple joy of competition, the camaraderie, the shared focus on something completely unrelated to fame or fool-making. It was pure, unadulterated fun, and it brought out a side of him that rarely got to shine in the spotlight, the kid from Tupelo who just loved to run and play as the regular season wound down, the standings solidified. The Hound Dogs and the Jailhouse Rockers were neck and neck at the top. The stage was set for the playoffs. The buzz around the set was undeniable. Everyone had their favorite team, their favorite player, their predictions for the championship. "It's gotta be the Hound Dogs," a set painter declared. "Elvis is too good." "No way, man. Joe's got them Rockers playing smart. They're gonna pull it off," countered a lighting grip. Even Colonel Parker, Elvis's notoriously protective manager, who had initially grumbled about unnecessary risks and distractions, seemed to have softened. He'd even been spotted once, watching a game from a distance, a faint, almost imperceptible smile on his face. He probably saw the value in a happy, unified cast and crew, even if he wouldn't admit it. The field, once a forgotten patch of grass, had become the heart of the movie set's community. And as the playoffs loomed, everyone knew that while there would be a winner, the real victory had already been achieved. The playoffs began with an electric atmosphere. The stakes felt higher, the hits, still too hand-touch of course, felt a little harder. And every play was met with louder cheers and groans from the sidelines. The movie Magic Gridiron League was no longer just a casual pastime. It was a bona fide event. The first playoff game pitted the energetic Heartbreakers, rejuvenated after their dinner at Elvis's, against the Blue Suits, Linda's team. It was a back-and-forth battle filled with surprises. Linda, who had spent weeks diligently practicing, was proving to be an unexpected asset. She wasn't flashy, but she was reliable, consistently making the catches that counted. In the second half, with the score tied, the Blue Suits were driving. They needed a big play. Their quarterback, a usually timid sound engineer, looked around for an open receiver. Everyone was covered. He spotted Linda, running a simple curl route near the sideline. It wasn't a deep pass or a fancy one, but it was open. He threw it. The ball was a little high, a bit off target. Linda stretched, reaching for it, her fingers brushing the leather. For a second, it looked like it would sail past her. But then, with a surprising burst of athleticism, she twisted her body, adjusted her hands, and somehow pulled it down. It wasn't graceful, but it was effective. She stumbled forward, gaining an extra few yards before being touched. The crowd on the sidelines erupted. "Linda, what a grab!" Linda, still a bit stunned herself, grinned widely. It was a clutch play, and it gave her team a critical first down, leading to a go-ahead touchdown. The Blue Suits ultimately won a nail-biter, advancing to the semifinals. Linda, the once clumsy extra, had become an unexpected hero. Meanwhile, the other semifinal saw Elvis's Hound Dogs facing off against Joe's Jailhouse Rockers. This was the game everyone had been waiting for. The rivalry was at its peak. The game was a defensive battle. Both team strategies were sharp and every yard was hard-fought. Elvis, as usual, was a force for the Hound Dogs, making dazzling runs and pinpoint passes. But Joe's Rockers were disciplined. They knew Elvis's tendencies, and Joe had devised defensive schemes specifically to contain him. Midway through the second half, the Rockers were up by a single touchdown. The Hound Dogs had the ball driving deep into Rockers' territory. Elvis dropped back to pass, looking for his favorite target. Just as he released the ball, Joe, who had been playing defensive line, burst through the offensive line. He wasn't fast, but he was incredibly strong. He reached out, not to tackle Elvis, but to block the passing lane. The ball smacked directly into his outstretched hand, and he managed to corral it. "Interception," yelled the referee. The Jailhouse Rockers' sideline exploded. Joe, looking surprised himself, lumbered forward a few steps before being touched. It wasn't a long return, but it was a crucial play, killing the Hound Dogs' drive. Elvis walked over to Joe, a wry smile on his face. "Joe, you sneaky devil. I didn't see that coming." Joe just grunted, but there was a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. He'd outsmarted the king. Despite Elvis's best efforts, the Jailhouse Rockers, fueled by Joe's strategic genius and relentless defense, held on. The final whistle blew, and to everyone's surprise, except perhaps Joe himself, the Jailhouse Rockers defeated the Hound Dogs. Elvis, though disappointed, was the first to shake Joe's hand. "Well played, Joe. You deserved that one. Your team was tough." Joe nodded. "Thanks, Elvis. You got a good team too, just we were better today." A faint smile touched his lips. The semi-final victories meant that the championship game would be between Linda's Blue Swedes and Joe's Jailhouse Rockers. It was a classic underdog story versus a strategic powerhouse, and it was clear to everyone that the league had produced not just a few good games, but a collection of unexpected heroes who had found their moments to shine on the dusty field behind the studio lot. The stage was now set for the ultimate showdown. The day of the championship game dawned with a sense of anticipation that crackled in the air. The studio lot felt different, less about the movie being made, and more about the impending showdown. Everyone from the highest paid actor to the newest intern seemed to have an opinion, a prediction, or a favorite team. The grassy field behind the lot was packed, not just with the players and a few curious onlookers, but with nearly the entire cast and crew, their families, even some studio executives. A few folding chairs had been set up, and makeshift bleachers were fashioned from prop crates. The smell of popcorn, courtesy of the craft services team, mingled with the scent of freshly cut grass. Elvis, though his Hound Dogs hadn't made it to the final, was there in full force, acting as the primary referee. He wore a simple white t-shirt, jeans, and a whistle around his neck, looking every bit the impartial official, though a small part of him probably wished he was out there playing. He walked around, shaking hands, cracking jokes, and getting everyone pumped up. "All right, folks," he boomed into a megaphone, his voice carrying across the field. "Welcome to the inaugural Magic Gridiron League Championship. On one side, we got the Blue Swedes, the Dark Horse, the Comeback Kids, led by their fearless leader." He winked at Linda, who blushed but straightened her shoulders. "And on the other side, the Jailhouse Rockers, the strategic masterminds, the quiet powerhouses, led by the one and only Joe." Joe gave a curt nod, a rare almost smile gracing his lips. The game began. The Blue Swedes, energized by their underdog status and Linda's newfound confidence, played with a fierce determination. Linda herself was making impressive plays, weaving through defenders, catching passes that would have gone right through her hands just weeks ago. She even made a crucial tag on the Rockers' star running back, stopping a potential touchdown. The Jailhouse Rockers, true to form, played a methodical, strategic game. Joe was a calm presence on the field, calling out plays, directing his defense, and making key catches when his team needed them most. His throws, though not pretty, were accurate, consistently finding open receivers. The game was a tense back-and-forth affair. Each touchdown was answered by another. Crowd roared with every big play, gasped with every near. There were moments of brilliant individual effort, a lighting technician making a diving catch, a cameraman with surprising speed escaping a tag, but more often, it was about teamwork. A series of short, precise passes, a well-executed block, a group effort to tag a speedy ball carrier. Midway through the second half, with the score tied, a critical moment arose. A Blue Suits player was running down the sideline with the ball, seemingly headed for a touchdown. A jailhouse rocker defender was hot on his heels. As the defender closed in, he lunged his hand, reaching out for the touch he missed. But in his effort, he accidentally clipped the Blue Suits player's leg, sending him tumbling. The crowd gasped. It was a clear trip. The Blue Suits player lay on the ground wincing. Elvis blew his whistle, a sharp, piercing sound. He walked over to the two players, a serious expression on his face. The atmosphere grew tense. Was this going to be the first real argument? The defender, a burly grip, immediately knelt beside the player. He'd tripped. "Oh man, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? I didn't mean to." The fallen player, a prop master, grimaced, but slowly, sat up. "Nah, I'm okay. Do you know the rules, son? No roughhousing?" The grip nodded, shamefaced. "I know, Elvis. I got carried away. My bad." Joe walked over, his face unreadable. "It was an accident, Elvis. He wasn't trying to tackle. Just got a little zealous." He looked at the tripped player, who was now standing, shaking off the dust. "You want to take the penalty? Or keep playing?" Prop master thought for a moment, then looked at the grip. "No, it's all right. Just a trip. Let's keep playing. It's the championship, after all." A wave of relief and applause washed over the crowd. Sportsmanship had prevailed. Elvis nodded, impressed. In the final minute, with the score still tied, Joe's jailhouse rockers had the ball deep in their own territory. Joe called a daring play. The ball sailed through the air, a perfect spiral, heading for their fastest receiver, but Linda, playing deep defense, seemed to anticipate it. She sprinted, reaching, stretching, and just as the receiver's fingers touched the ball, she got a hand in, deflecting it. Incomplete. The crowd gasped. A final whistle blew. The game was a tie. A stunned silence fell over the crowd, quickly followed by a cacophony of cheers and applause. Both teams had played their hearts out. There was no winner, but also no loser. They embraced, shaking hands, patting backs, exhausted but exhilarated. Elvis smiled, a genuine wide grin. "Well, folks," he announced into the megaphone, "looks like we got ourselves a championship tie. And you know what that means? Everyone's a winner today." What a game! The cheer that followed was deafening. Championship Showdown had delivered everything and more, proving that the real victory wasn't about the scoreboard, but about the spirit of the game. The immediate aftermath of the championship game was a glorious chaos of high fives, backpats, and shared laughter. Players from both the Blue Sueds and the Jailhouse Rockers, sweaty and grass-stained, embraced like long-lost brothers and sisters. Crowds swarmed the field, congratulating everyone, recounting favorite plays, and marveling at the incredible effort put forth by both teams. Elvis, still wearing his referee whistle, walked among them, his face beaming. He was clearly as energized by the outcome as anyone. "What a game, folks! What a game!" he kept repeating, shaking hands with every player he could reach. He found Linda looking absolutely radiant, despite her exhaustion. "Linda, you were incredible out there. That deflection at the end, that was a game saver." Linda flushed with pride. "Thanks, Mr. Presley. I saw the ball, and I just went for it." Her eyes sparkled with a newfound confidence. She wasn't just an extra anymore. She was a football player, a valued teammate, an unexpected hero. The league had given her a voice, a place, and a belief in herself that went far beyond the movie set. Then Elvis spotted Joe leaning against a prop box, wiping his brow with a rag. He still had his characteristic gruff expression, but there was a deep satisfaction in his eyes. "Joe, my man," Elvis said, clapping him on the shoulder. "What a performance! Your team was magnificent. You called a hell of a game." Joe grunted, then actually cracked a small smile. "Yours too, Elvis. You got a good bunch of folks, but my rockers, we got heart." "That you do, Joe. That you do." Elvis knew what he meant. Joe had transformed from a reluctant participant into a true leader, guiding his team with quiet wisdom and surprising strategic brilliance. He'd found a passion outside of his work, and in doing so had found a new connection with his colleagues. The grumpy gaffer had softened, just a little, and it was a welcome change. Later, a makeshift award ceremony was held. Elvis, with the help of the prop department, had managed to conjure up a few silly, oversized trophies. He handed one to Linda's Blue Suits for Most Improved Team Spirit. Linda accepted it on behalf of her team, her shy smile replaced by a confident grin. He handed another to Joe's Jailhouse Rockers for Strategic Masterminds. Joe accepted it with a nod, but then, to everyone's surprise, raised it high, prompting a cheer from his teammates. Elvis then awarded a Golden Touchdown Ball to the league MVP, a young lighting tech who had scored the most touchdowns. And finally, for the championship tie, he produced two equally large, identical co-champion trophies, one for each team. The Blue Suits and Jailhouse Rockers hoisted them together, a symbol of their shared effort and the bond they had forged. The group gathered for a final massive photo. Everyone crammed together, arms around shoulders, smiles wide. Elvis in the center was surrounded by his makeshift family actors and crew, men and women all equal on this dusty field. He looked at the faces around him, many of whom he barely knew a few months ago, and felt a profound sense of warmth. This wasn't just a movie set, it was a community. Over the next few days, as the movie wrapped up, the atmosphere on set was noticeably different. There was a lightness, a camaraderie that hadn't been there before. People lingered longer after scenes, chatting, reminiscing about the games. The usual rush to pack up and go home was replaced by a desire to hold on to these last moments of shared experience. The league had been more than just a diversion. For Elvis, it had offered a genuine connection, a way to be seen not just as the king, but as Elvis, a guy who loved to run around and play football with his friends. It had reminded him that the greatest successes weren't always found under the bright lights, but in the simple joy of shared laughter and collective effort. As the last scenes were shot and the final goodbyes were exchanged, Elvis knew that the movie they had made would soon be forgotten by many, just another film in his long career. But the movie Magic Gridiron League, the friendships it had forged, and the spirit it had ignited, those would last much, much longer. Months passed. The movie had long since wrapped, released to mixed reviews, then disappeared into the vast catalog of Elvis Presley films. Elvis himself had moved on to new projects. Another movie, then a grueling concert tour that took him across the country. The frantic pace of his life resumed, the constant demands of fame weighing heavily. Yet sometimes, in the quiet moments between takes or late at night in a lonely hotel room, his mind would drift back to that dusty field behind the studio lot. He'd remember the laughter, the sound of the whistle, the feel of the ball in his hands, and the faces of his cast and crew covered in sweat and smiles. One blustery afternoon, during a break from filming on a new California set, Elvis was idly tossing a football against a soundstage wall. He caught it with a familiar thud, and a wave of nostalgia washed over him. "Still got that arm, huh, Mr. Presley?" a voice called out. Elvis turned, surprised. It was Joe, the gaffer. He looked older, perhaps a bit more tired, but his eyes still held that familiar twinkle. "Joe, what are you doing here?" Elvis grinned, genuinely pleased. "Just finished up the job. On the next stage over," Joe replied, stuffing his hands into his pockets. You were over here. Figured I'd say hello. Man, it's good to see you. Elvis walked over, clapping Joe on the shoulder. Nah, not as much as before that field we had on the last picture. That was something special. Haven't found anything quite like it since, but a few of us still get together on Sundays. Toss the ball around, me too, Elvis said, his voice softer. That league, it was something, wasn't it? Yeah, Joe agreed. A rare, genuine smile spreading across his face. It was changed things, you know. On set, everyone felt closer. Not just us and them. Anymore, we were all oozes. That's what I hoped for. Elvis admitted. Just wanted to make things a little more human. You did that, Elvis, Joe said, looking directly at him. She glanced at Elvis. Then her eyes lit up as she recognized Joe. Mr. Peterson, my old team captain. It was Linda, no longer a timid extra, but a confident assistant director. Her hair was pulled back and she moved with a purpose. She saw Elvis, and her eyes widened further. Linda, look at you, Elvis exclaimed, happy to see her. Still playing football? Sometimes, but I've been so busy. I got promoted, you know, and it was partly because of the league. How's that? Elvis asked, curious. It gave me the confidence to speak up, to take charge. I told him about the league and how it taught me about teamwork. I think it made a real impression. She looked at Elvis and Joe, her eyes shining. Made me realize I could do more than just stand in the background. You guys, the league, it changed everything for me. Elvis felt a profound sense of satisfaction. It wasn't about the movie's success, or the money, or even the fame. It was about this, about Linda finding her voice, about Joe finding a deeper connection with his colleagues, about the simple, powerful act of bringing people together. You know, Elvis mused, I started that league because I was feeling a little restless, a little disconnected. I thought it'd be a fun way to blow off some steam, but it turned out to be so much more. It always does when it's real, Joe said quietly. They stood there for a few more minutes, reminiscing about specific plays, laughing about old jokes. When it was time for them to go back to work, Elvis felt a lightness in his chest he hadn't felt in a long time. As he walked back to his trailer, the football still in his hand, Elvis knew the legacy of the movie Magic Gridiron League wasn't just a few games played on a dusty field. It was in the friendships forged, the confidence gained, the barriers broken. It was in the quiet strength of a gaffer, the shining spirit of an extra, and the unexpected joy found in simply being part of a team. In a world full of illusions, Elvis had created something real. And that, he realized, was the greatest hit of all.